I'm pretty sure every electronics enthusiast has to go through a phase of wanting to build an oscilloscope. And I was no exception, but never dared to. Recently, I've been researching the STM32's integrated ADCs for high-speed measurement purposes, and it turns out they're pretty decent. Decent enough, in fact, to build a fully functional oscilloscope with not only impressive sampling rate, but also 2 or more channels. All in all, even the famous DSO138 is based on one of the most basic STM32s. The ability of a friend can be secondary development kit based on. Oh yeah, exactly what we need. So I finally decided to build an oscilloscope myself. This is going to be a big project, so I'll split it into several videos. In this one I'll build a simple working oscilloscope capable of up to 2 megasamples per second, and in the following videos I'll squeeze the maximum possible sample rate out of this MCU and build a 3 or maybe 4 channel USB oscilloscope. I have this STM32F207 Nucleo board, which has been laying around for years now. It's the most capable of all my MCUs when it comes to this kind of application. Not only is this board handy for programming and debugging, but it also has 3 ADCs that can take measurements simultaneously. By sharing the third ADC between 2 physical inputs, we can theoretically achieve 4 channels. But before designing a multi-channel oscilloscope, it is crucial to make a single channel work reliably. The operation of a single oscilloscope channel is shown here. The ADC converts the analog input voltage into digital values. These values are then transferred directly into the MCU's memory using direct memory access, or DMA. This allows us to store the data without constantly involving the CPU, significantly reducing the processor workload and making it possible to sustain the maximum sampling rate of the ADC. The data is then sent using UART. My first idea was to stream the data constantly and do literally everything else on PC. However, you may already see a problem with this approach. If every single sample were transmitted immediately after conversion, the constant overhead of individual UART transfers plus the CPU time spent managing them would make it impossible to sustain a high consistent sampling rate. To solve this, I use a hardware timer to trigger ADC conversions at precisely defined intervals. This gives us a constant sampling frequency, which is essential for an oscilloscope, since the time between measurements must remain consistent regardless of what the CPU is doing elsewhere. Instead of converting continuously, the ADC performs a conversion only when triggered by the timer, and each converted sample is automatically written into a memory buffer using DMA. Every 100 milliseconds, the current contents of this buffer are sent to the PC as a single data packet using DMA-based UART transmission, which doesn't block the CPU while the data is being sent. On the PC side, a Python script receives each packet, reconstructs the sequence of samples, and plots the waveform in real time. This is what the front-end code looks like. Its only function right now is to receive the data and plot it. The library I'm using for plotting, matplotlib, gives you interactive zoom and pan out of the box, so you can select time intervals without touching the code. Let's start by creating a new project in STM32Cube IDE. Select the target board and generate the initial code. First, we need to configure the system clock. The ADC clock is derived from the APB2 peripheral clock, so setting APB2 to the highest possible frequency allows us to maximize the ADC performance. The ADC clock itself is obtained by dividing the APB2 clock using the ADC prescaler. In my case, APB2 is configured to 60 MHz. With the ADC prescaler set to divide by 2, the ADC clock becomes 30 MHz, which is the maximum allowed ADC clock frequency for this MCU. This gives us the highest possible ADC conversion speed. Now we can assign ADC 1 to a physical input pin. In my case, ADC channel 6 is connected to PA6. Before configuring the ADC, we need to set up DMA or direct memory access. It allows the ADC data to be transferred directly into the memory without requiring the CPU to handle every conversion. This significantly reduces processor workload. In DMA settings, we enable circular mode. This allows DMA to continuously write incoming samples into the buffer without stopping after one transfer. Now let's move to the ADC parameters. The sampling frequency can be calculated using this formula. I made this table of maximum sample rate to resolution correlation for my ADC clock, which is 30 MHz. The sampling cycles is set to 3, which is minimum. Conversion cycles is described in the datasheet and approximately proportional to ADC resolution. I will keep the resolution at 12 bits for maximum accuracy. Later we can reduce it if we need higher sampling speed. With this configuration, my sampling rate would be 2 MHz. Continuous conversion mode is disabled because the ADC will not run by itself. Instead, each conversion will be started by an external trigger. Under regular conversion mode, we select TIM2 trigger out event as the external trigger source. Now let's configure TIM2. The timer uses an internal clock source, and its prescaler and auto-reload register define the trigger frequency. This is the formula of timer frequency. For the time being, I set the prescaler to 0 and the period to 29. According to the formula, the timer frequency will be 2 MHz, the same as the sampling rate. Now we need to set up the connection to the PC. For setup and debug simplicity, I decided to use the ST-Links programmer UART instead of setting up USB-C-DC directly on the microcontroller. The only downside of this approach is relatively low bandwidth. In UART3, which is active by default, change the baud rate to 921,600. I'll explain why in a minute. Initially, I used a blocking function how UART transmit to send the data. But then I accidentally found this function in the documentation. It sends the data directly from the memory via UART, completely bypassing the main core. Therefore, the data transmission is no longer blocking. In order to set it up, go to DMA settings and add a DMA request for UART3TX. Now in NVIC settings, enable both interrupts. Each data packet consists of 4096 samples, 2 bytes each, plus 2 more bytes at the start of each packet. So 8194 bytes in total. Every second 10 packets are being sent, which totals to 81,940 bytes per second. Since the UART protocol adds one start bit and one stop bit to every byte, we actually need 819,400 bits per second just to keep up with that data rate. The closest standard baud rate above that is 921,600, which gives us a real maximum throughput of 92,160 bytes per second, so it should work with a bit of headroom. Now you can generate the code and move to the main.c file. For the first test, the code will be extremely simple and I won't go into details since it's just a proof of concept that will be modified later in the video. We only need to add one function, 3 variables, one define and a few lines of code in while loop. The data is being written to the memory and sent to PC every 100 milliseconds. Let's take a look at the result. The test signal is a square wave at 10 kHz. And yes, it works. It even displays our test signal pretty accurately. But without a proper trigger, we cannot really see anything useful, since the signal keeps moving constantly on the screen. So I made a trigger with a proper pre-triggering built on top of the circular buffer. It took me quite some time, to be honest, but in the end it works extremely well. Not only for periodic signals, but also for single events. A dedicated function scans the buffer looking for a rising edge, a point where the signal crosses from below the threshold to above it, with a bit of hysteresis to filter out noise. Once that crossing point is found, the code grabs a fixed window of samples around it, some before the trigger point and the rest after, and sends that window to the PC. The trigger threshold is set by this number, and this number is responsible for the amount of pre-trigger samples. As a result, the signal is now stable. Full screen corresponds to about 2.05 milliseconds or 4096 samples. We can zoom in and out to see higher speed signals. For example, this is how a 100 kHz square wave signal looks like. Let's now go through the code in detail. I'll upload this project to my GitHub so you can take a look at it yourself. Let's start with new defines and variables. ADC buffer size is now 4 times bigger, or 16,384. Send samples stays at 4096. That's how many samples we actually send to the PC per packet. Trigger level is the threshold our signal needs to cross to trigger a capture. Pre-trigger defines how many samples before the trigger point we want to keep, so we can see what the trigger was doing right before the event. And trigger hist is our hysteresis, a small buffer zone that prevents noise from causing false triggers. Below that ADC buffer is our big circular buffer where the ADC keeps writing samples continuously. UART buffer is what actually gets sent over UART. Capture is a smaller array where we assemble the final window of samples, the ones we're going to send. And then we have two flags, ADC ready and ADC block. These track the state of the DMA transfer. In the main loop, instead of checking a timer like before, we just check ADC ready. If it's set, we clear it, call find trigger, and if it returns a valid index, meaning we actually found a trigger point, we call send ADC buffer with that index. Then we toggle the LED, same as before, just so we can visually confirm the loop is running. Find trigger function is where the actual triggering logic lives. The function scans through the most recently completed half of the buffer, looking for the exact point where the signal crosses our threshold, minus hysteresis level. That's a classic rising edge trigger with hysteresis. As soon as it finds that crossing point, it returns the index. If it scans the whole half buffer and finds nothing, it returns -1. Once we have a trigger index, send ADC buffer function builds our final capture window. It starts pre-trigger samples before the trigger point, wrapping around the buffer if needed, since it's circular, and then copies sent samples into capture array. After that, it's the same as before. Pack a header, convert each sample into 2 bytes, and send it all over UART using DMA. And finally, these two callback functions are called automatically by the HAL library. Since our DMA is in circular mode, it fires the half complete callback the moment it finishes writing its first half of ADC buffer, and the complete callback when it finishes the second half. All we do here is record which half just finished, that's the ADC block flag, and set ADC ready so the main loop knows there is new data to check for a trigger. This is a schematic of a simple analog section of an oscilloscope. It will provide the necessary voltage offset to measure AC waveforms, as well as limit the input voltage so it doesn't damage the MCU. For the time being, I will not be using any input section. In this case, it is important to never exceed the maximum 3.3 volts and to avoid negative voltages at the input. Let's now test the device. With this particular sample rate and trigger level, the sine wave under 12 kHz shows some trigger instability, since it spends a long time slowly crossing the threshold, giving noise a chance to cross the hysteresis band more than once. To fix it properly, both the sample rate and the hysteresis will need to become variable, depending on the measured frequency range. I will do it in following videos. This square wave doesn't have this problem, by the way. Its edges are fast enough that noise doesn't get the chance. Considering the practical minimum of 10 samples per period, the current 2 megasamples per second allows us to properly see signals only up to 200 kHz. This is completely fixable, but that's a topic for the next video. I'm planning not only to increase the sampling rate by reducing the resolution, but also to use all 3 ADCs in interleaved mode to triple the effective speed. I appreciate you watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.